vital importance of religious liberty around the world, mission in Vietnam, and an unnamed country coming up next. Hello and welcome to Mission 360. I'm Gary Krause. Today's program is coming to you from Ho Chi Minh City, formerly known as Saigon, here in Vietnam. And I'm standing in front of Independence Palace. And this is a historic site because during the Vietnam War, it was the home and the office of the South Vietnam president. And this was also the site of the end of the Vietnam War because on April 30, 1975, a North Vietnamese tank crashed through these gates during the fall of Saigon. Well, through the years, this country has been invaded by many powerful civilizations, but the people have proved themselves resilient and strong. And today's program will be looking at mission around the world. We'll be looking at mission right here in Vietnam. But first up, let's look at the importance of religious liberty.
For many Adventists, waking up on a Sabbath morning and going to church is routine. It's something we do every week. Many of us can't imagine anything more serious than the occasional illness or bad weather preventing us from going to church. For the most part, we have the freedom to worship when, where, and how we want. This freedom is called religious liberty.
Religious freedom, or sometimes called in the international community freedom of religion or belief, is part of a cluster of values that the international community has identified as necessary for human flourishing, for peaceful coexistence, and also for societal prosperity. The religious freedom has its root in God. God created freedom, and the reason is very simple. Without freedom, love is impossible. Love has to be a choice. So therefore, God created freedom. Also, even at a deeper level, we can think all human beings are created in the image of God. So if God is free, then God's image ought to also enjoy the same freedom.
Religious freedom is fundamental in accomplishing the mission of the Adventist Church, both theologically and practically.
The freedom to believe is only as valuable as your ability to build a church to worship in, or to share your beliefs with someone else, or to keep a day holy according to your religious beliefs. Without that ability to act, religious freedom doesn't really exist.
Religious liberty is typically seen as fighting for the Adventist Church's right to worship, or an individual Adventist right to worship. But at the Office of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty, or PARL, at the World Church Headquarters, Adventists take religious liberty one step further.
One of the things that I'm very proud about our church is that we don't just protect religious liberty for Seventh-day Adventists. We recognize that religious freedom is a gift from God, and that we can't coerce anyone to follow Him. We have to protect the rights of all people.
For instance, PARL has signed on to a legal case where a young Muslim girl was fired from work for wearing a religious headdress. PARL representatives have supported the rights of individuals from other faiths in efforts to uphold their religious freedom. What PARL advocates is an essential right God intended for every human being.
Well, without going into all the facts for this case, the important thing to note is that many people would say, why would we ask to protect the rights of a young Muslim girl? It's because those similar rights in the workplace are the same things that we as Adventists require when we want to get Sabbath accommodation. And so that's why sometimes in explaining it to people, it's important for them to understand that religious freedom for all is important. And without it for all, we can't get it for ourselves either.
My guest is Dr. G.T. Ng, who is the Executive Secretary of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And we're here in Ho Chi Minh City, and you know this territory very well, Southeast Asia, Dr. Ng.
A little bit.
A little bit. In fact, we were just talking earlier about the fact that you were born in Singapore, and there was something very special about where you were born. Tell me about that.
Yes, my mother was the first maternity patient, first Adventist maternity patient of the hospital. And I was the first Adventist baby ever born in that hospital.
And it was called the Youngberg
Memorial Adventist Hospital.
Wonderful.
During the 25th anniversary of the hospital, my mother was invited by the hospital administration to receive a plaque from the hospital president. And the plaque said, this is given to Mrs. Corina Lee, the first Adventist maternity patient in Youngberg Memorial Adventist Hospital. And the son of his name, the name of his son is G.T. Ng. At that time, I was serving in Cambodia. So my mother told me about it later on, and what an honor it was to be the first baby ever born there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, you were serving in Cambodia at that time. Now, that was the time too when you were forced to come to Vietnam. Tell me about that.
Yes, we were evacuated from Phnom Penh to Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City, in 1975. Ralph Watts, the president of Southeast Asia Union, ordered us out of the country because, according to news report, the Americans were to stop bombing Phnom Penh. And he said, all of you, student missionaries, and Ivy and myself must get out of the country before Khmer Rouge walk right into the city. And so obediently we obeyed his order, and that's why we landed in Saigon. And here we stayed for a couple of weeks, not knowing when to return. And so they put us up in the Saigon Adventist Hospital, in one of the guest houses, which was near here,
okay.
Yeah, in that direction.
And so, what was it like when you were here for that period of time? Uncertain, obviously.
Very uncertain as to when we will ever return. But the first impression of Saigon at that time was that Vietnam was a very peaceful country.
Compared to Cambodia.
Compared with Cambodia. At that time, Vietnam would have been at war for 28 years. That was 1973. And so I thought to myself, man, this is a peaceful city. There's no bombing. There is no gunshots that we could hear. You know, compared with Phnom Penh, there was constant bombardment, constant rocket explosions, you know, fire on the outskirts, lots of military actions, B-52 bombing in the evening, and F-111 fighter bombings during the day, lots of military activities. Whereas in Saigon, it was very peaceful. So we had 2 weeks, yeah, we could sleep well, and so we had 2 weeks of tranquility. But our tranquility was cut short when we were ordered back to Phnom Penh.
So you went back and you served there for how much longer?
For about a year more. Then the situation went from bad to worse, and so the union at that time said, there is no hope for Cambodia. We want you to go back to Singapore, where we will reassign you. So that was the second evacuation the following year, which was 1974. So we stayed there for about 3 to 4 weeks, you know, relatively longer than our period of the evacuation here in Vietnam. After that, things calmed down. So they said Cambodia is still there on the map. You return to Phnom Penh. So we were shipped back to Phnom Penh, where we continued serving for another maybe 6 to 7 months when we were finally evacuated for the last time. That was March 1975.
It must have been difficult to say goodbye to Cambodia under those circumstances.
Yes, we had 33 church members at that time. Most of them were baptized during our 2 years program in Cambodia. it was very difficult to say goodbye to them. You are right, because many of them will ask us with tears in their eyes, when are you returning? When are you returning? We need a pastor here to continue teaching us the Bible. We need somebody to pray for us and with us. When are you coming back? They say, we would like to come back as soon as possible, as soon as the situation calms down. We do not control our destiny. It's the Southeast Asia Union that caused the shot. As soon as they see the situation calms down, we will surely return. But looking back, it was only empty promises because we did not know the situation that will be so bad that it was impossible for us to return. Because right after our evacuation in the month of March, the following month, only a few weeks later, Pol Pot took over the country. So he began a reign of terror from 1975 all the way to 1979, in which 1.4 to 1.7 million people were killed. So it was a very dark chapter in the history of Cambodia.
Dr. Ng, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
God has never left his work.
No.
Even at the time when we thought the work was being cut short, when church members were decimated, God had his people being baptized and trained at the border of Cambodia and Thailand. And so there was a rebirth of our church in Thailand, and many of them returned to Cambodia to begin a new work. So we just praise God for his oversight and over his leadership over the situation here in Cambodia and Vietnam.
Thank you very much. Viewers at home, we're actually right in the heart of the 1040 window here, Cambodia, Vietnam, and I want you to please continue to pray for mission. I was talking with Dr. Ng earlier, and he was talking about the greatest need that we have is workers, people who are prepared to serve in very challenging circumstances, but we thank God for his leading, and we know that the future is sure in his hands. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Ho Chi Minh City, where just simply navigating your way across the road is a big challenge. It's either an art or a science, I'm not sure which, but either way, you're taking your life in your hands. Next up, we travel to a country where religious outreach is restricted, so we won't even name the country.
We're in a Middle Eastern country now that is somewhat sensitive, and so we won't identify where we are or who we're talking to, because we don't want to make problems where there don't need to be. But we're going to tell the stories anyway, because they need to be told, even if they have to look a little bit different and we don't know exactly who we're talking to. But I'm here with the mission president in this place where we're at in the Middle East, and I want to ask him to tell us a little bit of some of the challenges that we are facing here as a church. What is one of the most difficult things that you're facing here?
Yeah, we have many foreign workers here who are serving churches and home groups, but they are all from different culture and different language groups. So at first, it is very hard to understand the mindset of the people here. Because we are coming from Western culture and Western mindset and Adventist culture.
Yeah.
So this is quite different with this culture in this country. So when our workers facing the problems and difficulties with the people, it is hard to solve the problems, naturally. So it is a little bit challenging. So we are trying to share gospel with home groups.
Okay.
So we are developing home groups in different the cities in the country. And also we have some students who are working in the public campus. And also we have some there are different types of ministry, like literature ministry and health ministry. So we are trying to reach local people with different types of ministry here. The interesting thing is we are we have a very good result of the ministry, especially from literature ministry.
Okay.
Actually, when I came here 3 years ago, we didn't see much possibilities. We didn't see the bright future. But I think it is one of the, because of the political changes and the nation also changes a little bit. So because of that, people are more opened. More people are coming to visit our churches. So one of our church here, we are doing the literature ministry. We have 3 workers there who are dealing with literature, but they are receiving people from all the people who are passing by the church.
Yes, in this area, you're not allowed to go out and talk to people. They have to come to you.
Yes.
One young man did that,
Yes.
and he has quite a story. Tell us that story in about 2 minutes.
Yeah. He was living in Western country, and he became Christian 4 years ago. But he was not happy with the teachings that he was receiving in that church. The Bible study is not deep, and he was not satisfied. So he was praying to God to show the truth. So one day he got a vision. He said vision. I think it is like dream. He saw this particular city, and it was not just one time, but it is 3 times. So he couldn't sleep. So immediately he booked a ticket, and then he came to that city. And then by the grace of God, the providence of God, he came to our church, and he took our books. Actually, there was nobody there, but he took the book, and then he read it, and he was very impressed. And then he saw the writer, Ellen White. So he tried to look for another book of Ellen White, and then so he read 3 or 4 books, and then one day when he opened the book, he saw our address of the office. So he came to my office actually, and then he was very happy to meet Adventist, brothers. So we gave some more books, and then we also gave him the address of our pastor in his city. So he was contacting with him, and he continued read the book, and then he became Adventist. So now he came back to his home country, and then he is now serving the church as a volunteer.
And I met him last night.
Yeah.
He is very enthusiastic, very excited about the faith that he has discovered here. The dreams and visions are quite important to this religious group here, and so God works that way, still does. And so thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for sharing about the work that's going on here. I know that you're facing many things that you can't even talk about, but we will ask all of our viewers to keep you in prayer and to fight, spiritually speaking, from wherever we are in the world. God has had people in this place in the past, and it's like the forces of evil have made a comeback, and it's time again for God's people to make inroads here. Thank you for letting us talk to you for a few minutes today, and thank you for watching. Back to you, Gary.
Welcome back. If you're enjoying today's program, I invite you to follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Just search for Mission 360 TV, and there you'll see lots of videos like you're seeing on today's program. Next up, we're going to learn more about the importance of religious liberty.
Although religious liberty is a fundamental human right, the majority of the world is unable to enjoy this right. In fact, 76% of the world's population, or more than 5 billion people, live in countries with high restrictions to religious freedom. These restrictions include blasphemy laws that prohibit negative speech against the country's religious figures, anti-conversion laws that forbid conversion to any religion other than the dominant religion of the land, and requirements to gain official registration to operate as a church.
There are other places in a country like Kazakhstan, for example, where you have freedom of worship, which is distinct from freedom of religion. Freedom of worship simply says you can worship when and wherever the government says it's okay. So you can worship in a church, that's acceptable, but you may not be able to worship in your home, to have a Bible study among your friends. So there's a difference between worshiping where the government permits you to worship and having true religious freedom, allowing you to share your faith whenever and whenever you choose.
There's also the issue of social hostility. This is just where there is a lack of understanding of religious minorities. There may be a dominant religion in a country, such as a country in the Middle East that's predominantly Islamic, or countries which are predominantly Orthodox Christian. A religious minority comes in, and it can be very isolating to live in a society where you are the minority and many of your habits and activities make you different.
This is a topic of concern because not enjoying religious freedom goes even deeper than just not enjoying a right. Religious freedom is linked to what makes us human, our conscience. And if a person cannot function according to the dictates of his or her conscience, it is as if that person lives beneath the dignity of his or her humanity. So basically, you deprive people of their religious liberty, it is like depriving them of their humanity.
Parle responds to cases of religious persecution by visiting governments, lodging official complaints, and raising the issue in context in the United Nations. Essentially, Parle's primary work is to build good relationships with civic and religious leaders.
Some people would say, why do we need to interact with government officials? And one of the catchphrases that we've adopted is you need to make friends before you need friends. And so oftentimes we need government help when we're advocating for Seventh-day Adventist Church. We may have lost our legal right to exist. We may have Sabbath accommodation issues. We may have other workplace disputes. And so part of it is being a good neighbor.
People need to know us first before they will be able to understand our faith. If Adventists make a good impression on a local leader, this will positively affect the entire community or even a nation. This is how many mission paths are opened.
Positive relationships between the Adventist Church and civic or other religious leaders promotes mission work behind the scenes. For example, before coming to the General Conference, Nelu Bercha, Associate Director of Parle, worked in Romania promoting religious liberty in local schools and other areas of the community. As he built positive relationships with local officials, doors opened for the church's work.
One of our friends, the Minister of Education, visited the headquarters of the General Conference and was impressed by the Adventist philosophy on health, education, and religious freedom. On his return to Romania, he summoned all presidents of Romanian universities and talked with them about religious freedom in Romanian schools. It was an extraordinary step for religious freedom in Romania. In the following years, the Prime Minister was one of the speakers at a religious freedom meeting organized by Adventists, and even the President of the country supported our program promoting religious freedom.
This is the behind-the-scenes work Parle does to open avenues for Adventist mission work around the world. Daily building good relationships with other people supports the mission of the church. And that's something every Adventist can do right where he or she is.
Public affairs and religious liberty is something that can't be done from a central headquarters. It is inherently something that has to take place at the local level. It is individual church members building good relationships with people in their community, whether it's attending community events, making friends with your civic leaders, your mayor, your local council. These are all things that have to happen on a one-to-one basis.
If you see something, say something. Don't hesitate to write a letter, send an email, call your representative. Be a voice for freedom. And some people may say, I'm one person, I'm one voice, can I make a difference? The thing to remember is we're not called to be successful, we're called simply to be faithful.
Religious freedom, and this is key, is a lifestyle. I invite every Seventh-day Adventist to be seen, not just in the public arena, but by everyone as kind people, gentle people, respectful of people's dignity.
Please consider how you can promote religious liberty by building good relationships with others in your community. And please pray for the efforts of the Church in fighting for religious freedom in places where such freedom is limited. Thank you for supporting the mission of the Church.
Well, that's about it for today's program, and I hope that you've enjoyed our 360-degree view of mission around the world. As we've seen, there are many countries around the world where religious freedom is terribly restricted, and other places where we enjoy religious freedom and so often we take it for granted. And in both sets of places we have particular mission challenges, and I want to thank you for your continuing support of Adventist Mission. We consider you part of our team, the way that you pray for mission every day, the way that you support mission with your offerings, with your donations to Global Mission, and for your personal involvement. Thank you so much. Well, for Adventist Mission, I'm Gary Krause, and I hope that you can join me next time right here on Mission 360.